Hello everyone, welcome back to Sydney and Starlet, and if you're new here, welcome! Enjoy the videos. So today, me and Sydney are going to be reading Disney's Home on the Range, a read aloud storybook. So let's begin. Home. A little patch of heaven. This is a tale about the three greatest hero cows in the wild, wild west. That's right, we're talking about dairy cows who risked their very lives to save their little farm. And as the tale will tell, the rest of the west too. It all started way, way back when outlaws struck fear in the heart of every law-abiding citizen. The worst outlaw of them all was Alameda Slim. The sheriff ordered a hefty reward to anybody who managed to bring Slim in. Despite the terror Slim was spreading across the country, everything seemed just fine at a little farm called Patch of Heaven. Pearl, the farm's owner, adored all the animals, especially her two dairy cows, the proper Mrs. Calloway and young Grace. Then, one day, Pearl made an announcement. "Everybody, this here is Maggie." Alameda Slim had stolen all the other cattle on Maggie's ranch, leaving the owner penniless and Maggie homeless. Pearl had agreed to give her a home. "Wow," said one of the piggies. "You're the biggest cow I've ever saw." "Whoa, whoa, dang nabbit, Buck, slow down!" shouted the sheriff as he galloped onto Pearl's farm atop his cocky horse. The sheriff pulled a bank notice from his vest. If Pearl didn't pay the bank $750, she was going to lose the farm. And unfortunately, she didn't have the money. "I'm sorry, Pearl," the sheriff said sadly. "Well, sorry, it just ain't gonna save my farm," replied Pearl as the sheriff rode off. But Maggie wasn't ready to lose another home. She convinced Grace and Mrs. Calloway to ask Buck for just a little more time to pay the bank. So the three cows took the bank notice and set out for town to find the sheriff's horse. Little did they know they were setting out on the adventure of their lives. Saloon stage entrance. Bovine bounty hunters. The town of Chugwater was a strange and scary place to the cows. They heard loud noises everywhere, and humans were roaming free without fences. "What do we do?" asked a panicked Grace. Seeing a star on a door, the cows raced inside, thinking they'd found the sheriff's office. Instead, they found the local saloon. The cows accidentally ended up on stage, putting on the best darn show in the West. But the saloon owner soon kicked the cows out for making such a ruckus. Outside, Maggie and Mrs. Calloway and Grace bumped into Buck and the sheriff's dog, Rusty. But Buck was too busy daydreaming of being a hero to help the cows. More than anything, Buck wanted to catch outlaws. What did he care about Patch of Heaven? "Your farm is history," he rudely told them, as Rusty sniffed at the bank notice. Just then, swirling clouds of dust darkened the main street as a shadowed figure rode into town. It was Rico, the bounty hunter, and he had an outlaw strapped to his saddle. "I don't know how you do it, Rico," the sheriff said. "The only varmint left is that low-down, good-for-nothing Alameda Slim." "What's the bounty?" Rico asked. $750, replied the sheriff. That was the exact amount the cows needed. "I'm going to need a fresh horse," Rico announced. Buck sprang into action and did as many fancy tricks as he could to impress Rico. It worked. Rico saddled up Buck and prepared to hunt down Alameda Slim. "Hey, Rusty!" Buck cried. "I'm wearing Rico's saddle!" Buck's dreams were coming true. Meanwhile, Maggie was still thinking about the $750 reward. "Why don't we just capture Alameda Slim and use the reward money to save the farm?" she asked. "Oh, no!" said Mrs. Calloway. "Come on, Calloway," Maggie said. She butted the older cow playfully, accidentally knocking Mrs. Calloway's hat into the mud. "Not the hat!" Grace gasped. It was Mrs. Calloway's pride and joy. Furious, Mrs. Calloway charged toward Maggie. "What in tarnation?" the sheriff said. The two dairy cows were having a knockdown, drag-out, Wild West brawl. The sheriff ran over and quickly tied all 3 cows to the back of the chuck wagon. "Not exactly what I had in mind, but this'll work," said Maggie. But Mrs. Calloway was simply annoyed. She was far too dignified to be tied to the back of a chuck wagon. The chuck wagon set off toward the cattle drive, where Rico and Buck headed out to find Alameda Slim. After a while, the wagon passed a ranch being auctioned off. "What's going to happen to the cow who lived there?" wondered Grace. "She'll be okay," Maggie replied sadly. "How do you know?" asked Grace. "You're looking at her," Maggie mumbled, as a man named Yancy Odell purchased her former home. By nightfall, the cows had arrived at the camp where cowboys rested with their herd of cattle. Things seemed quiet enough until, thunk, oof, whoop! Alameda Slim's cronies, the no-good Willie brothers, sneaked into the camp and tied up the cowboys. "Come on, girls, time to loose these ropes," Maggie said. Just then, Alameda Slim himself rode in on his buffalo, Junior. Freed from her rope, Maggie charged him. That was when Alameda Slim reached for his guitar. He began to yodel. Within seconds, Maggie was in a trance, and so was Mrs. Calloway. Yodeling was Slim's secret weapon. It hypnotized cattle. Luckily, Grace was completely tone deaf, so Slim's music had no effect on her. But Grace still had to find a way to stop Mrs. Calloway and Maggie before they danced away with Slim. Still tied to the wagon, Grace ran down the hill as fast as her 4 legs could carry her. Soon the wagon scooped up Mrs. Calloway and Maggie. Just then, Grace's rope broke, and she found herself flying over the wagon's roof. The 3 cows careened toward the ground, and the cattle rustlers. Down in the canyon, the 3 cowboys were busy chasing Slim on their horses, when suddenly another rider appeared. Rico! He was riding Buck. Alameda Slim was surrounded, but just for a moment. In a flash, he and the Willies disappeared, along with the entire herd of stolen cattle. Just then, Maggie and Mrs. Calloway and Grace burst onto the scene and crashed into Rico and Buck. As Rico went to join the cowboys, Buck began to show his fancy hero moves to the cows. "Give the sheriff back his horse," Rico said as he watched Buck's antics. "This one's too skittish around cows." Buck was shocked when Rico replaced him. But if he couldn't be a hero with Rico, Buck decided to be a hero on his own. Meanwhile, Slim and the Willies were hiding out in an abandoned mine with a stolen herd of cattle. When Slim changed his clothes, it became clear that that he was none other than Yancey Yodel. It was all part of Slim's plan. He stole cattle, forcing ranchers to go broke and sell their land. Then he went to the auctions dressed as Wyodel and brought the land for close to nothing. "Just one more purchase and the whole dang territory belongs to me," he said, greedily looking at his map. Then he branded a $sign right on top of Patch of Heaven. The auction of Pearl's farm was only 2 days away. Nearby, Mrs. Calloway and Grace and Maggie were trying to follow Slim's trail. Suddenly, a flash flood swept them all away. Struggling through the water, Grace and Mrs. Calloway pulled Maggie to safety on high ground. "This whole ridiculous plan is just so you can get revenge on those cattle rustlers," Mrs. Calloway shouted. "This whole ridiculous plan is about saving our farm," Maggie yelled back. Grace looked on sadly as the cows decided to split up once the storm was over. The next morning, the cows met a jackrabbit named Lucky Jack. While Jack prepared breakfast for the cows, he explains that he had lived in Echo Mine, until some outlaw had taken it over. "Wait, there he is!" Lucky Jack shouted, pointing to a reward poster of Alameda Slim. Now the cows knew where Slim was hiding. Maggie and Mrs. Calloway agreed to work together long enough to capture Slim. Then Maggie would leave Patch of Heaven forever. Lucky Jack and the cows made their way toward the mine entrance. Buck was already there, but he couldn't get inside. Slim's buffalo, Junior, blocked the way. "The only critters that get by me are cows," Juno insisted. "Cows only." While Buck watched in disbelief, the 3 cows walked right past Junior, carrying Lucky Jack with them. The cows and Lucky Jack were closing in on Alameda Slim. Now all they needed was a plan, and Maggie had one. "You two get Slim's attention while I sneak up behind him," she told the other cows. "I'll knock him into the cart. Then we rope him up and wheel him to justice." But before they put their plan into action, Grace pulled off part of Lucky Jack's cottony tail to plug the ears of Maggie and Mrs. Calloway. She didn't want Slim's yodeling to hypnotize them again. "So long, Slim." Inside the mine, Slim quickly spotted the dairy cows. Smiling greedily, he began to yodel. Mrs. Calloway and Grace pretended to be hypnotized and trotted toward him. But before Slim knew what was happening, the cows had shoved him into a minecart. Then Lucky Jack conked Slim on the head, and away they all raced. Buck had managed to sneak past Junior and was galloping away from the angry buffalo. Suddenly, crash! Buck ended up in the cart with Slim. "I got Slim!" he cried in shock. "Rico's gonna be so proud of me!" Soon Buck and Slim barreled into an elevator and rocketed skyward. The cows barely missed catching them, and so did Junior, who was accidentally knocked down the elevator shaft. "Sorry," said Grace politely. When Buck and Slim reached the top of the elevator shaft, they flew out of the mine and raced past Rico. Screech! Buck stopped the cart. Then he turned it around and presented Slim to his hero, Rico. Buck was one proud horse. Suddenly, Maggie, Grace, and Mrs. Calloway raced past and snatched Slim away. Rico quickly leaped onto Buck, and together they started chasing the cows to get Slim back. Even Junior joined the chase after he made his way out of the elevator shaft. The cows rounded a bend in the tunnel and ran right into the Willies. Slim's silly sidekicks jumped onto the cows' cart and pulled the brake lever. showering sparks onto some barrels and gunpowder and dynamite. Kaboom! Mrs. Calloway and Grace, Maggie, Jack, and Slim went flying out of the tunnel and landed on the railroad tracks outside the mine. "We made it!" cried Maggie. But the cows' happiness quickly turned to terror. A train was coming toward them at full speed. Crash! As the smoke cleared, Slim burst out beneath the cart. "Dang it, nabbit! Guess I gotta do everything around here myself," he said, grabbing the 3 cows and handing them over to the Willies. Then he turned to Rico and tossed him a wad of cash. Rico was Slim's partner. Buck couldn't believe it. His hero was an outlaw. "Now, if you'll pardon me," Alameda Slim continued, "there's a little patch of heaven on the auction block this morning." Slim changed into his Yancey little outfit and raced off on Junior. As Rico climbed onto his back, Buck suddenly realized the truth. The bravest, noblest heroes he knew had been right in front of him all along. The dairy cows. "Make a break for it, ladies!" Buck shouted. He began bucking wildly. Pearl's girls helped Buck finish off Rico and the Willies. When the dust had settled, Maggie knew that their hope of saving the farm was gone. "Alameda Slim's already flown the coop," she said. But Mrs. Calloway wasn't about to give up. "We caught Slim once, and we shall do it again," she proclaimed. "Who's with me?" Everybody was. The cows unhooked the engine and climbed aboard. Lucky Jack and Buck ran alongside. The only chance they had of getting Slim and the reward money was to drive the train to Patch of Heaven. Just as Slim was about to sign the deed that would make Patch of Heaven his, the train arrived. The 3 cows wasted no time charging Slim, and they were soon joined by the rest of the farm animals. They butted, kicked, conked, pecked, and tickled Slim silly. Finally, Maggie and Grace booted him up to the train's smokestack. A blast from the steam whistle, courtesy of Mrs. Calloway, blew the Yancey little disguise clear off Slim. "It's Alameda Slim! You're under arrest," said the sheriff. He threw a lasso around the outlaw, and the cows watched triumphantly. They had fought the baddest outlaw in the West, and won. "Pearl," said the sheriff, "your cows can't do much of Slim's reward money. Think you could find some use for it?" "Woo-wee!" cried Pearl. "My farm is saved!" But where was Maggie? Had she kept her promise to leave as soon as Slim was caught? No way. She was just down by the gate, finding a snack. The next day, the whole gang at Patch of Heaven posed together for a picture to be in the newspaper, and Maggie was right there with them. The 3 cows were famous, but more important, they were all home. The end. So that is it for today, everyone. I really hope you all enjoyed it, and we will see you all next time. Bye-bye. Pick out your favorite page. mean, do you know all these pages by heart? It's a good page. Who's your favorite character? The hat? The hat's in the mud? Can you say hat?
Hat.
Hat. That's a good choice, but it's in the mud. Bye-bye.
Hat.
Hat.